Yo, know y'all missed the cloud. Mm. What are disturbing missing child cases? Everybody who, what I'm saying, have kids, man, always check up on your kids, make sure they safe, all that.
Jared Adedero. On the 2nd of October 1999, at around 11:30 in the morning, two men came across a very young boy while fishing at a campsite on the Big South Trail, which is a part of the Arapahoe and Roosevelt National Forest in Colorado. And while running into a lone child in the middle of nowhere is cause for concern, the two fishermen saw a group of hikers about 80 to 90 feet ahead. They figured that the child was a part of that group since after a brief conversation, the child ran off toward the group they saw. This child was 3-year-old Jared Adedero, and this was the last time anyone would ever see him again. To understand how a 3-year-old even ended up in that situation, we have to take a step back and examine the life of his father, Alan Adedero. Alan was a divorced, single father who was taking care of his two children, the 3-year-old son Jared and a 6-year-old daughter Jocelyn. Earlier that year, Alan had become deeply involved with a local religious organization known as the Christian Singles Network Group,
aka Cult.
By October, he was hosting 11 members of this group along with his two children at a resort he co-owned with his brother. On the day of the incident, the kids wanted to go on a trip to see a fish hatchery with the group. Alan was a bit reluctant at first to let them go, but ultimately caved in when members of the group assured him that they'd only visit the hatchery and come right back with the kids. However, for reasons that remain unclear, unbeknownst to Alan, the planned visit unexpectedly transformed into a 15-mile hike along the Big South Trail commencing at around 10 a.m. Taking two young kids on a lengthy hike without their father's permission, this was mistake number one. The second, and arguably the worst mistake the group made, was that no one took explicit responsibility for the kids. Everyone just assumed that someone else was looking after Jared and Jocelyn, when in reality no one was. To make matters worse, the hikers had split into two groups, those walking faster and those lagging behind. This separation made it nearly impossible to keep track of the kids' whereabouts. About an hour and a half into the hike, Jared reported
Adults, man. Why would you want to bring kids if you're not even paying attention to them? Well,
interacted with two fishermen before running off towards a group of hikers. Now, this is where things get a bit murky. From what I can gather, it's unclear whether he was somewhere between the two hiking groups or if he had already passed them entirely. The hikers seen by the fishermen might not have even been a part of the same group. Sadly, this was the point where Jared vanished. However, it wasn't until 12:15 p.m. that the Christian group realized that they hadn't seen him for over an hour. Panic set in, and some members of the group rushed back to the resort to inform Alan. He wasted no time, immediately driving frantically to the trail while beating his chest and saying, quote, "They lost my baby, they lost my baby." In the meantime, his resort manager filed a missing person report and got the rangers involved in the search. Since this was a fairly active hiking trail, the rangers in the area had plenty of experience finding missing people. So much so that the sheriff at the time stated, "Absolutely, I thought we would find him. Yes, it was a child, but my thought was we should be able to get in there with our people and do what we do and what we have done hundreds of times, find the person. It might take a few hours to find the child crying or hiding someplace nearby, but we would be done before midnight." He even instructed his subordinates to wake him up when they found Jared, but the news never came. After almost a full day of searching, Jared remained missing and the hopes of finding him alive began to wane. Things went from bad to worse when the helicopter that was searching for Jared stalled 100 feet in the air and crashed, injuring all 5 of its passengers.
Really?
By October 7th, over 200 professional searchers, a dozen dog teams, professional trackers, a dive team, and a plane were doing everything they could
Still couldn't find him. Like he just vanished.
to locate Jared, or at least find some clue that could answer his mysterious disappearance. Tragically, after 5 grueling days with no leads, the search for Jared came to a heartbreaking halt on the 8th of October. It became a massive story in the media and even led to the Colorado governor signing the Amber Alert plan into law. Jared's case, however, remained completely cold. That is until June 4, 2003, when two hikers named Gary Watts and Rob Osborne found some tattered clothes and a sneaker about 500 feet above Jared's last known location.
Are you telling me? Hold up. So you telling me about almost 1,000 people couldn't find these clues, bro? Search dogs couldn't find that shoe and those tattered pants, bro.
The pair already knew about his disappearance.
Two hikers. Two hikers.
So they instantly made the connection and contacted the authorities. What followed was a more thorough search of the area. And 10 days later, searchers made a grim discovery, a molar and a part of a human skull. DNA tests confirmed what Jared's family feared. These remains were his. They also confirmed that the clothing belonged to him, the same clothes Jared wore on the day he disappeared. After nearly 4 years of his disappearance, Jared's family finally had some closure. But even with these new discoveries, the question remains, what really happened to Jared? The most straightforward explanation is that he wandered off in the mountains, got lost, and eventually succumbed to hypothermia. But there's a problem with that theory. The spot where his clothes and remains were found is nearly inaccessible. It's extremely steep and rocky terrain that would be challenging for an adult to navigate, let alone a 3-year-old child. The most plausible theory is that he was attacked by a cougar. These animals are native to the area, and while they rarely attack humans, a small child could easily become a target. During the investigation, some of the hikers in the 11-member group also reported hearing a distant scream during that time, including Jared's sister Jocelyn. So, if the cougar theory is true, it would explain both the scream and how Jared's remains got so far from his last known position. And while it is pretty convincing, there are some inconsistencies in the animal attack premise that I find difficult to justify. For starters, researchers did not find any blood or cougar remains like hair on Jared's clothes. How can that be possible? What's even more puzzling is that Jared's pants were inside out when they were found in the forest. I can't think of any logical way a cougar, or any animal for that matter, could turn a pair of pants inside out. Not to mention the fact that the pair of sneakers they found were in excellent condition, considering they would have gone through 4 winters in the Colorado mountains. All of this points to a far more disturbing theory, according to which Jared was actually abducted and later killed by another person. And the reason his sneakers were in such good shape was because the kidnapper likely scattered Jared's remains on the mountain years after the incident. I realize this is a horrifying thought, but it's really the only plausible explanation that accounts for all these strange details. Unfortunately, even with all the evidence we have, Jared's case remains as much of a mystery today as it was the day he disappeared. And the truth of what happened to him may never be known. Paulette Gabarra Farah. On the 21st of March 2010, the Gabarra family returned from a trip to their home in Mexico. That evening, the parents tucked their 2 daughters into bed, unaware it would be the last time they'd see one of them alive. The following morning, the family's nanny, Erica, entered 4-year-old Paulette Gabarra Farah's room to wake her, only to find the bed empty. She could not find the 4-year-old girl anywhere in her room. She turned everything upside down while searching for Paulette before finally alerting the mother of the kids, Lizette Farah. Lizette quickly informed the authorities, and they started investigating the little girl's disappearance almost immediately. However, this case was unlike anything they had seen before.
Why?
Paulette had severe physical disabilities, so she couldn't have gone anywhere on her own. But the investigators didn't find any evidence of someone breaking into the house and kidnapping her either. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. So, after exhausting all of her options, the Attorney General's office quickly put together a poster explaining Paulette's situation and plastered it everywhere in the region. Lizette's sister, Arlette, also posted a few pictures on social media. Surprisingly, these social media posts went super viral, turning the disappearance of Paulette into a national headline. In the evening, Lizette even released a message on television to the potential abductors, asking them to return her daughter. She claimed that they could leave Paulette in a shopping center or some other crowded place and the family would not press any charges against them. Sadly, none of these efforts amounted to anything. That is until 9 days later on March 31st, when the little girl's lifeless body was discovered back where it all began, her own room. It was stuck between the mattress and the foot of the bed.
Whoa.
On the surface, this should have been the end of Paulette's case. However, the inconsistencies surrounding her disappearance were too significant to ignore. For starters, how is it possible that no one noticed the little girl's body just feet from where she was supposed to be asleep? The Gabara house was investigated by professionals who also used highly trained dogs.
What?
How could they miss something so obvious in their search? Most importantly, how did no one who visited her room notice the smell? As a comment on YouTube mentions, I found a body once. It was in a basement apartment and we went to do a checkup on her due to a smell complaint. Flies were everywhere and they were huge. The smell was thick and it stuck to everything. It was a hot and humid summer. She had been dead for 3 days. There is no way that Paulette was in that room for 9 days and no one noticed. The smell of death literally gets everywhere. Now, if the room was immediately taped off after Paulette's disappearance, all of this could have been potentially explained as nothing more than incompetence by the investigators. But in reality, the room had many visitors in the days after the incident, including guests who slept in that same bed for multiple nights. Lizette even gave an interview sitting on top of the bed where Paulette's body was later found. How did she not notice? The only logical explanation for all of these questions is that Paulette's body wasn't under the mattress during the initial searches. Instead, it was placed there later by someone, possibly one or both of her parents.
Really?
According to the official coroner report, Paulette moved onto the bed on her own and fell headfirst into the gap between the mattress and the frame. There, she asphyxiated and passed away before her nanny Erica came looking for her in the morning. But the evidence contradicting this official statement is a bit overwhelming. For instance, when the rescuers found Paulette, she was wearing dark trousers with a pink giraffe pattern. However, Lizette clearly showed the same trousers just days earlier while showing Paulette's belongings during an interview.
No, esa es la pijama inmigrante. Okay. Ya ni quiero
Nah,
decir.
they had something to do with that. They had something to do with it, bro.
Mejor miren la pijama ni la sacamos.
What's even more concerning is that during the official video where the authorities found the body, the investigators also uncover multiple bloodstains hidden in the sheets, some of which were the size of a soccer ball. At one point during the video, one of the investigators even remarks that they, referring to the parents, were beating up the kid. Despite this, the official report completely ruled out physical abuse and mysteriously made no mention of the bloodstains. When all this came out, it caused great outrage in Mexico, leading to Alberto Bazbaz resigning from his position as Attorney General of the state of Mexico. From what I've read on this incident, everything about this case suggests a cover-up by the authorities. It's possible one or both of the parents accidentally killed Paulette while attacking her and came up with an elaborate scheme to hide their crime while also farming media attention. And for this to work, someone high up must have been in on the scheme. Of course, all of this is merely conjecture on my part, as there's no evidence to prove any wrongdoing by either of the parents. Unfortunately, we'll likely never learn what happened to poor Paulette on that night. Unless, of course, someone with insider knowledge decides to come forward, though after 14 years, that seems increasingly unlikely. That being said, if the parents were the ones who caused this tragedy, they wouldn't be the first, because something very similar happened in this next case.
That's insane, bro.
Lucy Meadows. On July 25th, 1996, Jan Meadows visited the Rivergate Mall in Goodlettsville, Tennessee to sell some crafts at a flea market. After parking her car, she opened the back door to let her 3-year-old daughter Lucy out of the car. She then went to the passenger side of the car to retrieve some crafts she was going to sell. But when she came back around to the other side, her daughter was gone. She immediately contacted mall security and they conducted a thorough search of both the mall and the area surrounding it, but Lucy was nowhere to be found. Over several weeks following the incident, police dedicated hundreds of hours, interviewing 100 witnesses and relatives, following up on tips, speaking with parents of children resembling Lucy, and reviewing surveillance footage from the parking lot. Though the surveillance video was too distant to reveal any clues, it captured Jan Meadows wandering the lot, seemingly looking for someone. However, even after all this effort, they didn't find a single clue that could lead to Lucy's current whereabouts. But things were about to get much more disturbing when police started investigating Yeon. For some context, Yeon was a Korean immigrant who had separated from her husband Tom and was living with another Korean woman, Hyeon S. Dae, also known as Tammy. And in her original statement, Yeon claimed that she had only looked away for a few seconds, and that was all it took for Lucy to disappear.
She said she opened the door and walked around to the trunk, and then the daughter disappeared.
But after a couple of weeks, she changed her story and said that she might have been busy for 10 to 15 minutes. This is a massive difference. As the lead investigator at the time pointed out, if they had known the time frame for the disappearance was 10 to 15 minutes instead of under a minute, they would have searched more extensively from the start. This sudden change in story also put Yeon as a prime suspect in Lucy's disappearance. They put Yeon under 2 polygraph tests and she failed both of them,
Really?
after which she became reluctant to talk with the investigators. During this time, a neighbor also reported seeing
something
the
to do
3-year-old
with it.
Lucy wandering outside early one March morning and not dressed for the weather and crying. Police also questioned her housemate Tammy, whose statement didn't fully align with Yeon's story, making the whole situation even more suspicious. Police and the FBI then carried out an extensive search of the Meadows house, farm, and the surrounding area. However, they didn't find any evidence against Yeon or Tammy, and the case was left wide open with no leads for the next 18 years. But then in November of 2004, a witness came forward. He claimed he saw Lucy lying on the floor at home wrapped in a blanket and looking like she could have been dead a day before her supposed disappearance. And while the police never released the name of this witness, I believe it was Daniel, Tammy's son, who would have been 11 years old at the time of the incident. If we take his testimony as truth, many of the inconsistencies in Lucy's case begin unraveling. Lucy was likely already dead before her alleged disappearance on July 25th. Yeon disposed of her body somewhere and then made up this abduction story to cleverly mask the truth. As for who killed Lucy, it could be Yeon, it could be Tammy, or both. And the cause of her death could range from extreme neglect to overwhelming abuse. We have no way of knowing. And if Yeon and Tammy have managed to hide the truth for over 28 years, it's unlikely they'll confess anytime soon. That said, the case is still open at the Goodlettsville Police Department. Who knows, maybe we'll see another witness come forward sometime in the future. Sabrina Eisenberg.
Sabrina, come crawl to mommy. Come here. Come here, gorgeous.
This is the first video Florida couple Steve and Marlene Eisenberg recorded of their nearly 5-month-old daughter, Sabrina. What they didn't know at the time was that this was also going to be the last. A day after this video, on the 23rd of November 1997, the couple watched a Disney movie with their 3 kids and tucked them into bed. Marlene later checked up on her daughter around midnight before going to sleep. But when she woke up the next morning, she was greeted with a tremendously frightening sight.
And as I turn around and I look and notice my laundry room door out to my garage is opened. And then as I get closer, I'm looking now out to the street and seeing that my garage door is up. So now I'm just looking straight out to the street.
She immediately rushed to Sabrina's bedroom, which was the closest to the garage. Unfortunately, it was already too late.
I ran into the first bedroom, which is Sabrina's room.
So your baby, they put their baby in the first room alone. I don't understand people, bro. Like, why not have her in the room with you?
Room. And I look in the crib and Sabrina.
Some people don't need to have kids, bro. It's not funny, but it's true, bro. Some people don't need to have kids, bro.
Is gone.
They're
And I
not ready for
scream,
kids.
Scream.
This shook Marlene to her core, which is quite apparent from her disturbing 911 call.
911. Hello. I need to believe my baby's been kidnapped. Alright, ma'am, need to calm down. Okay. Alright, take a deep breath. What is your baby's been kidnapped? I just got a point my son up. My garage door was wide open. My house to my door was wide open and my baby's gone out of the
Upon closer inspection, the couple found out that Sabrina's disappearance was partially their own fault. They had forgotten to close the garage door the night before. As the police got involved, they started a manhunt for the supposed kidnapper, which ended up being the largest manhunt in Florida history at the time.
Really?
Investigation of Sabrina's room revealed a mysterious footprint and some unidentified fingerprints near her crib. Now, this should have been the proof that someone had already kidnapped little Sabrina. However, cops were struggling to find any other lead or evidence that could lead them to the perpetrator. So, instead of continuing their search outward, they shifted their focus inward, turning their attention to Steve and Marlene.
The idea that someone could have walked into a suburban home in the middle of the night, plucked a 5-month-old child out of her crib, obviously raised a lot of suspicion around the Eisenbergs.
It's unusual for a true kidnapping. A lot of times they find out that it's someone the family knew or had knowledge of, and that's part of the leads we're looking at.
Sabrina's parents were now lead suspects in the case of their own missing daughter. They were summoned for extensive interviews on multiple occasions and were also instructed to take polygraph tests. And while Steve passed his tests, the results from Marlene's tests came out inconclusive due to the stress she was under. It seemed like the higher-ups had already made up their mind about Steve and Marlene being the perpetrators, and were just trying to find any evidence that could support this conclusion. At one point, they even instructed Marlene to appear cold and uncaring on TV, and then used that to question the legitimacy of her feelings for her daughter.
Please bring our baby back to us. She needs her mother and her father, and we all miss her and love her very much, and we need her to come home to us, please.
It backfired because the perception was that they were cold.
Marlene was seen by some as being not authentic, unemotional. Law enforcement seemed to focus in on that display.
It took all the strength that I had to say what I said, and then the minute I was done, I broke down in tears. Okay, hysterical. But of course the cameras were not put on me then.
It got to the point where Steve and Marlene were no longer interested in talking to the police and hired an attorney to act as a shield. However, this only made things worse for the Eisenbergs, because on December 12, 1997, law enforcement successfully received the court's permission to install hidden listening devices in their home.
Really?
These devices remained active for almost 3 months and captured over 2,600 conversations between the couple. Police then used these recordings to build a case against Steve and Marlene, claiming that they had found evidence of the couple admitting to Sabrina's murder. These alleged transcripts included statements like, on December 23, 1997, Marlene said to Steve, "The baby's dead and buried. It was found dead because you did it. The baby's dead. No matter what you say, you just did it." To which Steve responded by saying, "Honey, there was nothing I could do about it. We need to discuss the way that we can beat the charge. I will never break from the family pact and our story, even if the police were to hold me down. We will do what we have to do." On January 21, 1998, Steve said, "I wish I hadn't harmed her. It was the cocaine." And 10 more counts of similar incriminating statements. They also used these as evidence to break into the Eisenbergs' home and arrest the couple. However, when the cops presented this evidence in court, the judge was unable to make out the phrases that were claimed to have been said. The entire case was dismissed, and Steve and Marlene even won a counter lawsuit which made the government pay their attorney fees for the bogus lawsuit. And from my research, I'm fairly confident that Steve and Marlene were likely not the reason behind their daughter's disappearance. One of their old neighbors also came to their defense in a YouTube comment which read, "I lived about a half-mile from the Eisenbergs at the time of this tragedy.
Damn.
We also had a 6-month-old baby boy at the time.
Really?
I never so quickly moved my son's crib into our master bedroom for a month or so after that happening. Personally, after hearing so very much about the case, and I actually knew someone who knew the mom, these folks could not have done it. They were genuinely wonderful parents and a decent, normal family. My heart goes out to these people to this day. Our son is 25 now. Sabrina would be 25 years old this June. So sad."
Damn.
Sadly, while the police focused on blaming Steve and Marlene, the real perpetrator continued to slip further from their grasp. Now, it's been over 27 years since Sabrina disappeared. It's unclear if she's even alive or if she met an untimely death. The Eisenberg couple, however, has not given up hope.
But leaving the garage door open, bro. Oh, you gotta check everything before you go to bed, people. Yeah, what? Shit all cricket. Self love is the best love, man. I'll catch y'all in the next one.